Now is Democratic Congressman Adam Schiff, member of the Intelligence Committee and Appropriations Committee. Representative Schiff, good to see you. Thank you for joining me.
Good to see you.
So we have Ambassador Mansour presenting a picture of a hopeful future there. Peace, openness, and moderation. Does it have any hope, really? And does the United States have a role in pursuing that?
Well, there is hope, and I think that we have made progress in terms of dealing with Fatah and Mahmoud Abbas in the West Bank. It's been a tragically different story in Hamas-ruled Gaza. In Gaza, for example, where Israel has allowed in construction, building materials, tried to allow Palestinians to improve the quality of infrastructure and life there, what we've seen, unfortunately, is they've used a lot of that material to build tunnels from which they can infiltrate Israel and kidnap people. So, those open borders are wonderful in theory, but even if the relaxation of those restrictions has led to these tunnels, you can see Israel's reluctance. But the broader point, I think Alex is exactly right, and that is at the end of the day, when this fighting is over, the only answer is a return to a peace negotiation and a two-state solution. That's the only way that this continual cycle is going to come to an end. But
you bring up a good point in that the supplies and resources being used to make tunnels. What could be done to discourage that? Does it mean perhaps a change in leadership from the old to the new? I mean, do we get at all a sense that younger Palestinians, that they are more amenable to peace, that it's almost a generational thing?
Well, I think that's certainly true of many Palestinians, that, they don't want to fight the fight of their fathers. At the same time, others are merely becoming further radicalized. And if you look in the region more generally, with all of these fighters flocking into the region, then it makes you really worry about the next generation. But I'm an optimist, and even though the Middle East proves optimists wrong all the time, I still think that there's a way to resolve this, and that the Israeli people and the Palestinian people can live side by side in peace.
But sir, the way you're talking about, I mean, things that have to be done to help to not have the younger generation become more radicalized. I mean, what's being done right now is only playing into that. It's a catch-22.
That's unfortunately exactly right. I mean, if you look at what's been going on in the West Bank over the last few years, the economy has improved there, relations between Israel and the Palestinians have improved there, security has improved there, because Israel has a partner there in Mahmoud Abbas. There is no partner in Gaza, and as a result, Hamas has been increasingly marginalized, which is good. Egypt has been cracking down on the cross-border smuggling. But on the other hand, this was Hamas' way of reasserting itself and making itself relevant again. And unfortunately, it has been successful in the sense that a very marginalized Hamas is now leading the fight against Israel. And, what we have to try to do in our discussions with our partners in Egypt and Jordan and elsewhere is make sure that the end of this conflict weakens Hamas, that the people of Gaza, as they should, blame Hamas for the loss of lives and the ruined infrastructure, and that we get to a model that's much more like the relationship Israel has with Fatah in the West Bank. But of course, that means, and you asked at the outset, Alex, what can the United States do? We can continue to play a role in trying to help the parties to a negotiated end, and I'm not talking about the ceasefire, but to the broader conflict. We still have, I think, an indispensable role to play there.
So when it comes to trying to have a weakened Hamas, does it make sense then for the Israeli military to see their mission through, to eradicate the tunnels, try and get rid of as many rockets as possible? But the question is, can the Gazan people survive that?
Well, I think that Israel may be coming close to the destruction of the tunnels, and Israel is going to have to stay in this fight until they do. After one ceasefire that was rejected by Hamas and another violated by Hamas, that's not going to allow them to go forward. I think they can't risk another violation by Hamas. So hopefully they're nearing the end of the destruction of the tunnels. I think from the Israeli point of view, the one thing they have to make sure is that Hamas gets nothing for having started this war, that the people in Gaza place the blame, as they should, on Hamas. And the only party that should be strengthened from this on the Palestinian side is Mahmoud Abbas, because they've been willing to negotiate and work with Israel. And so it's, I think, very much in Israel's interest to make sure that Fatah and Mahmoud Abbas are strengthened this, not Hamas. And they have to, I think, reject any solution that somehow empowers Hamas through this.
I want to switch gears here and talk about what happened this week when it was revealed the CIA did indeed break into Senate staffers' emails and computers. This after Director John Brennan had vociferously denied it a few months ago. Some of your colleagues have demanded his resignation. A couple things here. Should he step down? Do you believe laws were broken? And should the 5 CIA staffers who did it be prosecuted?
Well, it certainly looks like laws were violated, and I'm going to wait till the independent review is completed in terms of what the accountability should be, whether they should be fired. I think certainly some people should be fired. Whether they should be prosecuted will also depend on what their intent was. But I have to say, from what we've seen so far, the fact that they used phony online identities to search these Senate computers indicates to me they knew what they were doing was wrong. So I think there's going to have to be some serious accountability here. In terms of the director, it really depends on whether the director was knowledgeable about this. I would hate to believe that he was, since he protested so loudly and vehemently that the CIA would never do what, in fact, it had done. If it turns out that the director knew about this, then he'll have to go. But I certainly hope that that's not the case.
As you're well aware, at the heart of this is the much bigger issue of the torture report itself. In fact, here's the president on Friday.
Before I came into office, I was very clear that in the immediate aftermath of 9/11, we did some things that were wrong. We did a whole lot of things that were right, but we tortured some folks. We did some things that were contrary to our values.
Let's talk words for the first time. So what's next?
Well, those were the kind of words that, frankly, I was expecting to hear the president say after the release of the report. But it looks like events may have gotten ahead of where they intended to be. Well, I think that Senator Feinstein ought to fight to have as much of this declassified as possible. What I've seen from my perch on the House Intelligence Committee is that the agencies often seriously overclassify things that are either already in the public domain or would cause no injury to the agency except for potentially embarrassing or not reflecting well on the agency. And that's not a purpose for classification. So I hope that Senator Feinstein sticks to her guns. I'm confident she will. And I think it'll be ultimately very important that this be made public, that we, allow the American people to see what took place in their name, and that we tell the world that we are not unwilling to disclose where we have made mistakes and take remedial action. So I think it's important for us at home. I think it's important for us abroad, even as it doesn't reflect well on one chapter of our history.
All right. California Democratic Congressman Adam Schiff, always a pleasure. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Alex.